Ave Maris Stella.
Hello and welcome back to Vatican II in a Year. This is your host, Father Matthew Schneider. I am a priest of the Legionaries of Christ, and I teach theology. This is a podcast on the StarQuest Production Network at sqpn.com. Today we're on day 266. We're covering Ad Gentes 32 to 34 on collaboration between bishops and religious. If you want to follow along, we have a reading plan and more details at sqpn.com/Vatican or frmatthewlc.com/Vatican. Yesterday, we spoke about we need unity in the missions, which is shown in unity around the local bishop, and bishops should collaborate with each other to avoid unneeded multiplication. Today, we're going to end Chapter 5 on planning missionary activity, and we're going to talk a lot about this cooperation, but instead of with the bishop, it's going to be more with the religious institutes, different communities dedicated to the mission, their collaboration between each other, with their bishops, and with institutions of higher learning which specialize in fields that might help out the mission. So, this is 3 paragraphs, but they're actually don't have a lot of long subparagraphs, so it's not a super long day. So, let's get straight into it. Paragraph 32, it has 4 subparagraphs. We're going to read A and B, which is need for coordination between institutions and bishops, and then C and D about the mission institute still useful when switching to a more stable local church. We're going to read those 2 groups, so let's get straight into it. 32A. It would also be good to coordinate the activities which are being carried on by ecclesiastical institutes and associations. All these, or whatever kind, should defer to the local ordinary and all that concerns the missionary activity itself. Therefore, it will be very helpful to draw up contracts to regulate relations between local ordinaries and the moderator of the institute. B. When a territory has been committed to a certain institute, both the ecclesiastical spirit and the institute will be concerned to direct everything to this end, that the new Christian community may grow into a local church which in due time will be governed by its own pastor with his clergy. One little note before we begin, to remember that local ordinary here refers usually to a bishop, but a lot of times in the more distant mission territories, you will have a priest there as being in charge of it. And oftentimes the priest will be also the local director or, of the provincial or whatever of all the missionaries there. Most of the missionaries there who are in his community, but they may have other communities. For example, when we had Cancun, Chetumal, there's a whole group of sisters, mainly based out of there, who would go and do catechesis in all these different towns. And those were not legionary sisters. Those were sisters in a community that is out there. And so we would have an agreement with them. Those kind of things happened. So the idea here is this coordination between dioceses and bishops and the religious communities and those bishops and dioceses, right? Or mission territories, whatever kind of territory it is. And this is avoiding undue multiplication. This really reminds me of our previous paragraph we talked about yesterday, 31, which was talking about how close dioceses shouldn't just each build their own seminary and things like this. And I think a lot of this is similar things. We should make sure that if one community is building a university in this mission territory, we're not having 3 communities building Catholic universities right beside each other and poaching each other's students. And that's important to note. And it's good to have clear contracts. And like I kind of noted there at the beginning of this explanation, sometimes certain areas are entrusted to certain communities, especially male communities where you can have a priest who's in charge of it. Or for the ones in between, just totally out there mission territory in a diocese, they'll have a bishop in charge of it. For example, I've mentioned a few times, the Legion used to have what started out as the prelature of Chetumal, and now is the Diocese of Cancun. It's slowly developed over the last 50 years from being this small, out-of-the-way place where it's still very much a mission territory, converting people from Mayan religious practices to Christianity, to now being an established diocese with sufficient local clergy and that kind of thing. Back when we took it on, Cancun was just a small fishing village. It was not the Cancun you all think of today. And Chetumal is the state capital. It was at the time the biggest city, but now it is dwarfed by Cancun. So moving on to C and D, Mission Institute is still useful when switched to a more stable local church. I've noted Cancun as an example because it fits here. It will talk about an example where we have gone to a local church. And I'll mention that towards the end of the explanation. Let's read it. 32C. When the commission of a certain territory expires, a new state of affairs begins. Then the Ecclesiastical Conference and the Institute in joint deliberations lay down norms governing the relationship of the local ordinaries and the institutes. It'll be the role of the Holy See to outline general principles according to which regional and even particular contracts are to be drawn up. D. Although the institutes will be prepared to continue the work which they have begun, cooperating in the ordinary ministry of the care of souls, yet when the local clergy grows numerous, it will be provided that the institute, insofar as this is in agreement with its purpose, should remain faithful to the diocese, generally to take over special works or some area in it. So this is talking about this idea that it's changing from mission territory to a local church. It also mentioned here contracts, because sometimes the Vatican will entrust it to 50 years and then have to renew it or things like that, or maybe switch to a different community if this community is, well, we don't have enough members to take care of these 3 mission territories, so we're going to move to 2. So like Vatican, which we propose that we let go of this one, something like that. But we also have to look at when we transition to local clergy, and that's the goal of this. We're not hoping to just have this particular area of the world as a mission territory forever. No, because we want local churches everywhere. And this also frees up those who feel called to be missionaries to go on mission in other parts of the world where there isn't really an established local church. And there's a question of what to do as these take over. Now, slowly they're going to take over. It's not going to be like on one day to the next, all of a sudden we have tons of local clergy. But, for example, in Cancun, Guatemala, slowly the local clergy took over more and more of it, and the legionaries had to take less and less of being pastors or being the ones going to all these little towns out in the countryside and things like that. And we end up taking on, we have like a university there, we have schools there, things that we do. Now, we as a community are not strictly only doing missions. Other communities may just strictly only do missions, and so as that transition happens, they may remove themselves completely from the area just based on their charism. Each religious community has a slightly different charism in this regard, and that's going to affect how they deal with this transition. So, paragraph 33 talks about how different institutes in the same area should coordinate. Let's read it. Oh, there's A and B, but we'll read it. A. The institutes engaged in missionary activity in the same territory should always find ways and means of coordinating their work. Therefore, it will be very useful to have conferences of religious men and unions of religious women in which institutes of the same country or region should take part. These conferences should ask what things can be done by combined efforts, and they should be in close touch with the Episcopal conferences. B. All these things, with equal reason, should be extended to include the cooperation of missionary institutes in the homelands, so the question of joint projects can be settled with less expense, as for the instance of formation of future missionaries, as well as courses for missionaries, relations with public authorities, and with international or supranational organizations. Sorry, I slipped there at supranational, not supernatural, which we talk about supernatural a lot more, but supernatural means across various nations, above nations. So this idea is that we need to have this cooperation. We need to make sure that we're cooperating between the sisters who run the school here, the other sisters who run the other school, the brothers of priests who run the other school, things like that. And so we need conferences where we can discuss, and we need to be in contact with the bishops, obviously. And some of this is also look at it before we head out, so we can set up cooperation in the homeland. So several American communities can set out, okay, we're gonna go on mission here in this country in Asia or something like that. And they could coordinate the formation. Perhaps this country has a very difficult language to learn, and so if we're going to send 5 or 10 missionaries a year, maybe having the sisters and priests who are going to be going to this country learning that language together might be more helpful than trying to each set up their own institute for learning the language, learning the culture, things like that. That's an important aspect to consider. So that's what we think about. Now, moving on to our last subparagraph, last paragraph, J, which is 34. It has it just has one paragraph, no subparagraphs. And it talks about the idea of academic institutes and the coordination with these institutes regarding preparing missionaries, regarding looking at better ways to do missions, and that idea of the study of missiology. So let's read it. Since the right and methodological exercise of missionary activity requires that those who labor for the gospel should be scientifically prepared for their task, and especially for dialogue with non-Christian religions and cultures, and also they should be effectively assisted in the carrying out of this task, it is desired this, for the sake of missions, there should be fraternal and generous collaboration on the part of scientific institutions who specialize in missiology and other arts and disciplines useful for the missions, such as ethnology and linguistics, the history and science of religion, sociology, pastoral skills, and the like. So hopefully that's relatively clear, but this idea is that we need these missionaries we need these institutions to help and to work with the missionaries work with the institutions, and the institutions work with the missionaries, so that we have missionaries who are well-formed. This idea of scientific here is not the idea of chemistry, biology, physics. It's the idea of being strict and methodical in how you investigate things, right? So you can do science of like, okay, what is this people's culture like? What is this people's religion like? And that's a sociological study that you can do scientifically. And that can help you to better see, hey, where can we help bring in the gospel to this culture? Because it's going to come in different doors to different cultures. And so that's important to really build that up. That we need that. And in our studies to prepare for whatever ministry, whatever mission we're going to have in the church, whether it's being a missionary like this or other things like that, we should have this kind of scientific way of formation, this strict and methodical way. And so hopefully this can help to do more, to bring more into the mission field, and to help people to really be missionaries who apply all the principles of the church, who are able to reach people more easily with the gospel and bring them to know and love Jesus. So this concludes today. Thank you for listening to this episode of Vatican II in a Year. This is a listener-supported podcast, and you can donate to help StarQuest produce it and other great podcasts at sqpn.com/give. You can give one-time, monthly, or join the StarQuest Patreon. Tomorrow, we will continue with the next paragraph of Ad Gentes, which is paragraph 35 and 36 on evangelizing is a fundamental duty. This starts chapter 6, which I think is our last chapter. Please join us to learn more about Vatican II, which can provide a blueprint for the Catholic Church. If you want more information on the podcast, like playlists and a reading plan, go to sqpn.com/Vatican, frmatthewlc.com/Vatican, or Vatican SQPN on Facebook and X. There's also an SQPN Discord server at sqpn.com/Discord, and on there you'll find a channel for Vatican II in a Year, which I check occasionally. Amen.